Think about it. The Habitat for Humanity. Do they feed people? No. Do they clothe people? No. Do they provide jobs for people? No. What they do is build houses. That's what they focus on. So ask yourself in your organization, what is our organizational mission? What is it that we do? And how does my team, be it purchasing, marketing, sales, logistics, whatever it is, how do we fulfill that mission? Okay? Think on that. And then the most important thing is, what's our values? The values are our collective beliefs, what hold us together. We see this a lot in teams. And of course, now when sports teams have, well, we believe in one another and unit cohesion. Our military exists on the principles of that. But I've worked in a lot of organizations that have printed value statements. And I'm sure some of the organizations out there, you all have, many of you have this kind of stuff. And you know the good thing about it, if you act on it, it gives you license to behave the way you would like others to behave, and frankly, sometimes call people out, like, hey, you're not living our values. And yes, can that sometimes sound a little bit like middle school? Yeah, but you know what? It gets people's attention, especially in meetings. If we have people who are cutting people off, or being disrespectful, or not treating people as contributors, you can call them out on that thing. Those are our values. Think of it as the positive. Legacy. And as someone at my age, I'm on the end of the baby boomer cycle, legacy is a very real concern from people of my age. But actually, when you're 25, you should be thinking of your legacy. Not so much in the sense of retirement, but how am I going to make a difference? Because your legacy really, it's not when they hand you the proverbial gold watch. First of all, they don't give you a watch, and second of all, it's not gold. But more importantly, it's what have I done? Have I left the place in a better spot? Is the organization better now than when I found it? That's your legacy. And legacy is also your sum of the mistakes you make. All right? It's that difference. That what have I done? Okay, I've owned up to my mistakes. I'm going to do it better. And ideally, a leader's legacy will have more pluses than minuses. But the legacy is what you leave. And the legacy is an outgrowth, certainly, of your purpose. It is what enables you to make that positive difference and to think long term. What am I going to do differently? How am I going to tap into the potential of my people? Who am I overlooking? What other resources do I have? How can I collaborate more effectively? How can I be more creative? How can I think and look over the horizon? Those are the things that form our legacy. Those are the things that lead to purposeful action. And it's very important. So thank you very much. You've been a great audience. It's been a privilege to speak to you. And let's go, Michigan.
Leaders are called upon to make tough decisions. The tougher the decision, the more powerful it is, and it's up to the leader to make that decision. You know, frontline people can and should be making decisions as much as they can. Okay, you want to do that. If the leader's doing all of the work, making all of the decisions, then nothing's being done. You don't move forward. So you got to, but the leader stands at the top. Now, Jeff Immelt, the CEO of General Electric, has quantified this in his own way, and he said, my job as a CEO is to make between 12 and 17 decisions a year. If I make less than that, it's an asylum. If I make more than that, I drive good people away. In other words, what he's trying to do, and whether those numbers hold up, I don't know, but he's saying that the big decisions are mine, but I want my people, my senior leaders, and all the way down in the different levels at General Electric, to be making their own decisions. So it's a good way of thinking about what it is I need to do. And often leaders have to make the tough decisions. It's not between right and wrong. It's usually not about the ethics of something. Those are pretty straightforward, at least we hope they are. It's between the hard right, the two rights. And what course of action? Do we buy this company? Do we develop it ourselves? Do we implement this process? Do we go in a different direction? And more importantly, on a people equation, I've got two talented individuals. Whom do I promote? Those are the hard right decisions. That's what the leader is challenged to do. That's what only he or she can do, and it's his or her responsibility to make those decisions, the tough decisions. You know, the example of Robert Kennedy had that famous saying, some men ask why and others ask why not. And the word why is such a powerful, powerful word to gain information. But the trick is you ask from a position of wanting to know something, not as a prosecuting attorney. Why were you there on the evening of November 23rd? And what were you doing there? That's not going to encourage nice, friendly dialogue. It's more like, what if or why did we do this? Challenge assumptions. And it's not just why, the words you ask, but what can we do? How can we do it? And most powerfully, what can I do to help the organization? You know, there was a senior executive at Borders, who's no longer there, and that she used to go out and shop the stores. And she always introduced herself and spent time with the store managers and the assistant managers. Why? Because they knew their customers better than anyone else. But she would also say, what can I do for you? And when you say that as a senior leader in your position, that's such a gift. That opens the door to conversation. And that's the way you engender support for you. You got to radiate confidence. You know, times are tough. You got to be the person. You have to be the point person. You have to be behind your team, not with a happy talk all the time. It can be cheerful at times. You got to sometimes be a cheerleader. You know, Bo Schembucker, a great coach here, used to say that the time to kick a team, as was the word he used, was knock them down a peg, is what Bo meant, was after a win. You buck them up when they're down. That's when you do it. And that's what you need to do. Buck them up. Be there for your people. That's essential to leadership.
When we hear the topic of motivation, I know some of you are thinking, oh, wow, he's going to talk about how he climbed Mount Everest backwards, or how maybe I walked across the Gobi Desert blindfolded, all right? Or swimming the English Channel with one arm tied behind my back. Well, first of all, I did none of those things. And I'm not going to talk about that. Motivation is not something that comes from a speaker, but promise you won't tell anybody that. It comes from inside of us. So think about what motivates you. What gets you up in the morning? And we're going to talk about some things, but I want you to think about that question. What excites me? What gets me up? What gets me going to class? What gets me out there? What makes me want to make a positive difference in this world? All right? That's what motivation is. Creativity, trying to tell you something. I believe that all of us have a sense of creativeness. Now, we all think, well, the artists are creative. Yes, musicians are creative. You know what? Scientists are creative, too. Environmental scientists are creative. Forensic scientists need to be creative. All right? And this, I did a little, maybe some of you know Frank Capra is a famous Hollywood director. He did legendary movies like Happened One Night, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It's a Wonderful Life. What I didn't know about Frank Capra was that his first job, he was an Italian immigrant, grew up in Southern California. He went to the Throop Institute, which is today Caltech. His first job, he was a chemical engineer. And he went into the Army, served in the First World War in munitions, and came out and said, you know, I really don't want to be a chemical engineer. Got a job in Hollywood as a prop master, all right? And then got an opportunity to write and to direct and became a great director. So I think a hunch is creativity trying to tell you something about his own life. You know, I want to do something differently. And it's a good example because when he was a young man your age, he wanted to be a chemical engineer. Became one of the greatest Hollywood directors of all time. Totally different career change. He was redefining his purpose.
Now, there's a wonderful quote from one of Indiana's greatest and proudest. They called him the Indiana Rubber Man, John Wooden. He came across a quote that I have used. My daughter even found it, and she used it in her planner. She's a university student, and I hadn't given it to her, so I was quite proud that it resonated with her. Do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. And so often we look at organizations and there's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of sometimes inertia. And we think, oh, I can't do that, or my boss is going to say no, or my direct reports won't like that, or maybe customers won't. And so we defeat ourselves with our ideas before we even start. So the challenge in leadership is do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. Okay? And focus on what you can do. Leadership is about making things work with the materials and the resources that you have. And that's very critical. And I think all of you in the healthcare world know that. You know how to make things work. If you don't have if all the pieces don't fall together, you can take care of patients. You know how to do it. So this is that kind of attitude that I'm asking you to adopt from a leadership perspective. What can I do for my team? So don't let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. I can be a better communicator. I can be a better supervisor. I can be a better motivator. I can do those things. Why? Because I am in control of that. But it's something to reflect on. And it's a 6-word memoir. And the story behind this is that it was Ernest Hemingway was once challenged to, could you tell a story in 6 words? Now, some writers might have flinched from that, but not Papa. So next day he came back, so the story goes, for sale, baby shoes, never worn. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. Little tells you a story right there, 6 words. Okay? And so, what does that mean to us? So Smith College, and through their alumni network, said maybe we could ask our alumni and anybody to come up with their own 6-word memoir. What works best for some reason is the rhythm of the words are couplets, 2 words, 2 words, 2 words, triple couplets. So that prosaic example that came out, born poor, worked hard, died rich. So you could use this little memoir device. You could use it for yourself, personal, but your leadership self. All right? What is it you want to aspire? Challenge your team. What's your 6-word challenge? And maybe it's not a memoir, but what should be our legacy in 6 words? What's our challenge in 6 words? And so these are just some starter questions. What gets you up in the morning? How do you help others? What are your points of influence? How do you want to be remembered? So this little memoir is a focusing tool. And if you use it in coupling, perhaps, with your peer coach, it might come to greater understanding. You may provoke greater understanding of self, your team, and what you can do for the organization. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formal part of my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.